And we're back. I wish we had caught that. But again, it's a podcast exclusive. We are back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. We're focused on Star Trek The Next Generation, and we've come at last to the recap for Season 5. I was so honored that you ended Season 5 with me, Sean, and I'm honored now that you're here on the recap. And we may have a surprise visit from the doctor, but you know, if we don't, it's still going to be a fun recap episode. I'll guide you through it. I know
it'll be boring until he gets here.
you were hoping to sit this one back, but I don't think we'll be able to do that.
I was hoping to be like a kind of a sit back guest and just watch you guys do this. I'm new to this. I don't know what to do.
Well, the very first recap episode was done as a way to kind of reflect on the first season, and I have to admit, it was like I was way more organized. I went back.
Trash talk on season 1, wasn't it?
What? Yeah, I think over. I mean, I do think that was definitely a note in our discussion was that like it was surprising, as you know, all these years later to rewatch season 1 and realize, oh, it's not that great.
It isn't. It's really the only episode that stands out to me in season 1 is like the 11011 whatever the name is episode.
Oh, the binars, right?
Yeah, the binar episode. I think it's like 11001001 or whatever.
But of course, looking at it as the TNG as a completist or a completionist, if you will, which is how we kind of see it now that we know everything that happened. These discussions about TNG are actually they're not like our discussions of Discovery, which are a lot more reactionary because we don't know what's gonna happen next, right? Like, so to be fair, the one thing like what you just said, like that what I think is like every season has its like charming moments and jewels and like exciting things that like those are the things you end up remembering about the season, because eventually you forget about all the plot holes and things like that.
Well, as time passes, we become more indulgent, don't we? Except for the X-Men movies, where they just get worse and worse.
Your brain is completely on Marvel. You don't really want to talk about.
Well, it is Marvel, but it's.
I mean, like, yeah, but still, you don't want to. You really don't want to talk about Star Trek today. It looks like you just want to talk about it. X-Men.
They gave me an Avengers Endgame trailer. I'm hype. Okay.
You're also tuned into the live feed at the comic convention where they're showing Spider-Man Homecoming. Like, your heart's really into this this recap here. So
I love it. I love it. So we're recapping the first 10 years of Marvel, right? That's it. Right, the first 10 years of Marvel Studios.
So a tradition on the recap shows is that we go through episode by episode, Sean, using the beautiful artwork that Gary from Trekker Prize. The Gary from Trekker Prize. You weren't this excited when Famke Jensen met Patrick Stewart.
I wasn't.
The Perfect Mate, and that was a total opportunity for you to get really marvelly.
It was.
I
always do things wrong. I'm sorry.
It's all right. No, you're fine. better late than never.
Okay. Which is a great show. I'm sad it was cancelled.
Wait, there was a show called Better Late Than Never?
Better Late Than Never. Henry Winkler, William Shatner, George Foreman.
Yes. And it got canceled.
Oh my god, he's the one I don't remember because he was the American football player, and I'm not too good on American football.
Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah, they did 2 seasons.
I have no idea why I know that.
Why do you know it's Terry Bradshaw? Anyway, the show was cancelled, but Better Late Than Never was a great show. I loved it. It was emotional. I had a lot of laughs and I had a lot of cries.
Were there any, I'm a William Shatner aficionado or fan or enthusiast, whatever you want to say.
There's a lot of William Shatner. He's very present.
Was there a William Shatner moment that made you emotional? Like, was there one that you can remember during the show? Remember, we audience, if you're here and you think there's no spoilers, there are lots of spoilers on Starfleet Boy. So
No, the two moments that made me cry was Henry Winkler,
Germany.
Germany.
I saw that episode. Yes.
The pavement where
That made me cry too.
that
He
was
was
horrible.
really he was
And
super emotional. That's
there
true.
was the George Foreman. There were two moments with George Foreman. There was one where he met the family of a guy that he fought in his youth, like at the Olympics, I think it was. But then he met the family, but the guy was dead, and he got to meet the family, and it was a very emotional moment. And there was also a moment
I didn't
where
see that one.
it was a moment where he went and helped out a kids club for boxing, and so he went there and trained with them, and it was very emotional. It's a great. I love the show. You know, I don't remember any sad moments with William Shatner. It's just he's the fun guy. He made me laugh a lot.
It just goes to show he's got a great life, and he's a Canadian.
And let me not be mean and promote the host Jeff, which
Jeff.
I don't know what he does, but he was there, and
so someone's got to be like the hard worker, right? Because like someone's got to go and like. There's no way William Shatner's gonna lug his luggage upstairs or anything like that. That's what Jeff is there for. He's there to help.
Hey, look, if I met William Shatner in the street and he was having to handle his luggage, I would carry his luggage to his hotel, right?
I would. Oh, of course. I would do that for a stranger, though.
It would be.
That's like a nicety.
Just any stranger.
Yeah, anyone, just anyone. If they asked. Really? I don't know if I would volunteer. I mean, so that's the difference. If I saw William Shatner, I'd ingratiate myself.
Yeah, okay.
But if I were asked by anyone, I would definitely do it.
You would carry my luggage like 6 blocks to my hotel.
Yours especially because you're my friend. But
so nice.
Happy Christmas.
Yes.
Happy Christmas, Trek on the Tube. That was your sentimental moment on Starfleet Boy. So let's get started. We're stalling a little, audience, admittedly, because we're trying to. No, well, we're also we're giving the doctor a little time. What's that?
We're bringing the Christmas chair.
Yes, we are. Oh, and here we go. So I'm gonna share my screen. Hang on. See. Let's open these here. Oh, it didn't open correctly, so I have to do it another way.
God damn it. Technical difficulties.
I know they give us very little to work with here on this starbase that I'm on right now. They don't even have a holographic technology. I have to talk to you on a view screen. Yeah, I can't believe it. Like, who?
In all fairness, I think that view screens are much better than holographic communication devices.
Let's see if this works.
Boom! Nope, here we go.
Oh no, it didn't work though. Hold on.
Well, I see something, but I see nothing. I see you now.
Okay, I figured it out. Starfleet Boy is all about technical difficulties. We love them. They're still out of order. Oh, maybe it's because... Hold on one second. Come on!
Redemption Part 2. What was Redemption?
That's the episode that wraps up Worf's exile story.
Yeah.
All right, let's see if this works. It's funny because Gary has them numbered absolutely correctly, but my computer doesn't understand how to parse.
Well, can you not do like the what is it? Rearrange them by order, like by name?
Yes, I'm trying. Yeah. God damn it, that's what I'm trying to do. Tea, Earl Grey, hot.
that I'm trying to accomplish.
My Aunt Adele. Hold on, here we go.
My Aunt Adele.
You know, well, haven't you? That's something that they introduced this season was Captain Picard's Aunt Adele. Remember he offers the doctor.
Did she die in a fire?
Oh my gosh, you managed to get it in there. You did such a good job. That was really good. That's yes, she does die in a fire, actually. Or she's already dead, I think. Poor Aunt Adele. So my whole system froze, and I'm not going to restart my. I'm not going to restart my computer over this, so we might not be able to see Gary's beautiful artwork. Hold on, no. I'm trying. Hold on. There's got to be a way. There's always a way to do this. Let's try opening it in this program instead.
I will say, Old Man Picard, it better be like an emotional show, because he's had a very, full life and a very emotional life, Picard.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I really hope they're gonna bookend a lot of that, because I think a lot of people got mad for Nemesis because it bookends nothing much and.
Aha. Okay, here we go. So it doesn't want to open. For some reason, it does not want to open them in order, no matter what I do. So I'm just going to show them one at a time here. We're just gonna have to do it the old-fashioned way. Sorry, I was trying to be so pro, guys.
Starfleet was on stick shift today, but it's fine, whatever.
Once again, that's a really good way of. I'm surprised you didn't call it manual, because I thought stick shift was a very American term.
I think it is.
I thought New Zealanders.
We do say manual, but my brain is all confused because I'm a child of the world.
Yeah, that's that you are indeed. All right. So we figured this out. Technology. Here we go. Application window and ta-da!
Yes.
Computer. Display Gary's artwork. Redemption Part 2. So we are. Do you remember this episode?
I do remember this episode. Did I watch it in my journey? I watched it in my full rewatch of TNG recently, it's a good thing I did that. The last year I rewatched all TNG, but I didn't rewatch it with you guys. I came into this season with episode 2.
That's right. Okay, so Redemption Part 2, I think for me it was a really good episode. I liked that whole kind of Civil War, not the whole idea that there was a dispute for the chancellor position and Worf getting his family name restored, et cetera, et cetera. But and also Tony Todd's created as his brother. There's a lot of cool things about that episode because it sets up kind of I think it really positions Worf in a solid place as far as story points are concerned, the main cast. You think of Worf as a very developed, fleshed out character, and it's because he has 2-parters and there's a lot of exploration of his Klingonness.
He is one of the characters that they do take time to make 2 parts about. Mm-hmm. We do get Data 2 parts, but then the whole of TNG is basically about Data and Picard.
I think I can't remember, but I think everyone gets a 2-parter by the end of the show.
When does Beverly Crusher get a 2-parter?
I have it. I just there's I can't think.
When
of
does
it.
Deanna Troi get a 2-parter?
Well, isn't the Romulan one coming up next season? Isn't that a 2-parter? The one where she's masquerading as a member of the Tal Shiar.
Is that a 2-parter? Is that about her though, specifically?
Well, she's Well, I mean, okay, but like, sure, but like, we don't really get too many two-parters about anyone. I'm just saying, like, a main
Hmm.
cast member featured. But you're right, Worf seems to stand out in that way too, where he
They do
gets
the
a
same thing in Deep
two-parter
Space Nine as well.
all about out of
He
yeah.
gets very significant episodes. It's because he's so important to the Empire, ironically, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
he's always been part of like the Federation, Starfleet. He was born on Earth. Well, he was raised on Earth. Wasn't born there, but he's so important for like the Klingon Empire.
I agree. And I think Worf is kind of like that. We kind of talked about this on our discussion of the brightest star, but like he's definitely like a character that, kind of the reason why he's so important is because he's like a unique character. I mean, he's a
Mhm.
Klingon who was raised by humans, who serves in Starfleet and is working for the Federation, where he should, even though the Klingons are allies with the Federation at this point, it's kind of like a tenuous thing. They're like, well, there's a lot of places where we just don't agree, and so we kind of want to maintain. It's kind of like Brexit, if you think about it. It's like the
What?
Klingons are like yeah, we'll be your ally, but we don't want to be a member of the Federation, right? Like, isn't that basically what it is?
I don't think so. I think that. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's it. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yeah, and that's never, as far as I know, at the end of Voyager, that's still the
But Brexit is all
relationship
about
that.
leaving the like
No, I
the
know. No, I
union,
know.
whereas these guys have never really integrated. They've never been part of the Federation. They're always just
the
kind of allies. But they're allies because they can't afford to not be allies anymore because of Praxis. Um. Anyway.
I still don't understand the full effects of Praxis, because like in Star Trek 6, and we haven't recorded our Star Trek 6 discussion yet, so I'm sure this will be fleshed out a little bit more. In Star Trek 6, there's this like dire situation happening where
Mm.
basically the Klingons only have a certain amount of time, like I think they say 50 years of life left on their homeworld, right? Because Praxis explodes. But in all of Klingon space, I can't imagine that there's not another habitable world where the Klingons can just relocate and
It's not
start
so
like a
much about that. I think it's also a lot about how Praxis was one of their main like
energy production
yeah,
facilities, is what they say.
like most of the empire would get its energy from this moon. They were digging from this moon, and so there was like an issue. There was a problem, and that's what blew up Praxis, which makes me believe that like the problem was a cover up for like an attack or something. But
Well, the other
that's not kind of that's just me thinking about that. But anyway,
right.
the problem is it puts the empire in a situation where they probably need external help. They need to start importing or trading or creating stronger alliances if they want to sustain their empire, which is why they end up like stopping their fighting with the Federation.
Yeah, that makes sense. But again, so
As you say, though,
but
the
as
empire
we
is so big, though.
yeah.
I mean, is this one moon, you know, really
Well, that
enough
would be the
to
interesting
supply the
story,
entire
but
empire? But anyway.
I think that's what's kind of missing from the TNG era, is that because Star Trek 6 literally came up with that in the middle of while TNG was running, it kind of goes against what TNG was establishing the Klingons as in the future. And so then later I think they do backfill and like they mention Praxis or whatever. But what I would say is that in the TNG era, clearly the Klingons have recovered, but there's no real ever discussion about it as far as I know, and like you don't ever see, as far as I know, Praxis until I think Star Trek Into Darkness. There's it's implied that the moon is perpetually in a crashing orbit with the Klingon homeworld, and so it's like this weird thing in the opening sequence. You do see like a destroyed moon kind of
Mm.
orbiting very closely to the Klingon homeworld, and I thought that was a striking and interesting idea that maybe
I'm not sure
Praxis
it's the
exploded.
same. I'm not sure
No,
it's the
I,
same
I
situation in Prime Timeline. I think the Kelvin timeline does its own thing. Kelvin
it
timeline
does,
always
but I'm
makes
just
things more
saying,
spectacular, doesn't it? But
right. But I mean, they don't say it, but I wonder if that's meant to be like the Kelvin's version of like a Praxis situation, and that's why the Klingons in Kelvin universe are so hardcore
Hmm.
because
I'm
they're very
disappointed that
metal.
I'm very disappointed that the neutrino bomb that they have in Star Trek Discovery was placed in Konos and not in Praxis, because I would have liked it to be placed in Praxis and then people forget about it, and so many years later in Star Trek 6, it blows up, and that's what blew up Praxis.
That would have been amazing. We
That
had
would have
talked
been
about that.
just
Uh, we had talked about it in our discussion, and it could have been just as easy to have done it. And it would have like
it would have justified, like, saying that we all know that Praxis is one of the main, like, energy sources for the Klingon Empire, so it would have been justifiable as well. You could have still had
yeah,
exactly the same story.
I agree. I agree. Well, so that was Redemption. I remember the Doctor and I rated it pretty high. I think we gave it close to eights or nines or something like that, maybe
Oh
even higher
wow!
than that. Yeah, it was like
Did you guys
a well,
enjoy
we
seeing I forget her name.
what's that?
What's her name? Tasha, yeah, the actor.
Oh,
I
Denise
forget what she's called.
Crosby.
Denise Crosby. You guys enjoy seeing Denise Crosby now and
We
then.
like her a lot. Yeah, we like her
Okay.
a lot, and she's a great actress. And I think that like in a way, this was her redemption and her way to come back. You know, even though Sela doesn't really last very long, but it was her way to like come back in. And I think fans appreciated it. I definitely appreciated seeing her at the time. It was a source of excitement. The next episode is an episode that I love and cherish. I think of it as one of those quintessential Star Trek episodes, and that is
Mhm.
Darmok in
Yeah.
Tanagra, where the walls fell. And to me, this is just such a great episode. Paul Winfield, pretty sure we gave it a 10. He's Commander Terrell, Captain Terrell from Star Trek II, the captain of the USS Reliant,
I
the
gave it a
same
7.
actor. Yeah, I think so. I think I give it a 10. I'm pretty sure.
It wasn't as like I have a very I had a very high memory of this. Like the way I remember this episode was just amazing, kind of in a light standard. But then upon rewatch, I found that it wasn't quite as um you know overwhelmingly amazing. But I
we
don't know how to
we
say
want
it.
to
Wasn't
be overwhelmingly
it
amazed
wasn't it wasn't
these days. Hold on, I got
it
a
wasn't pure
technical issue. Oh, there we
greatness.
go. We want
It
to
wasn't
be overwhelmed.
pure greatness, but it was real. It is, still is a really good episode, and it's very iconic too. It's one of those defining TNG episodes that kind of everyone knows about and everyone can reference and everyone can understand.
It's true. Oh, let me make this a little bigger. Enter
The
full screen
performances are
now.
great as well.
There we go. Yes, the performances are superb. I don't know that there's much more I need to talk about this episode. I think it's just one of those where I can say, just go watch it. Pretty cool, pretty unique
Absolutely.
and interesting episode. All right, so next is the introduction of Ensign Rowe.
Ooh.
And so let me pull that beautiful artwork showing off the beautiful, in my opinion, Michelle Forbes. Although she doesn't really get to show off her full human beauty. Here she is playing Bajoran. In fact, the prototype for Bajorans, and basically, I think I remember talking about how this episode was cool because it basically like set up Deep Space Nine. It was like Star Trek kind of doing its own little, kind of like sneaking in a little bit of foreshadowing and stuff like that before DS9 came aboard.
It is. It is. They did that. They did that with the Bajorans, and then they did
And the
for the
Maquis.
and the Maquis. They did the Bajorans for the TNG Deep Space Nine transition, and then they did the Maquis for the Deep Space Nine Voyager transition, which was ironic, the second one, because they kind of dropped the Maquis in Voyager, but kept it on, like kept it going in Deep Space Nine.
Well, yeah, but there's no. It makes sense because in Voyager, it's like there's no There is a
There's
lot of Maquis attention though in season 1 and season 2.
season 1 and 2. There's a lot of I call you Starfleet, I call you Maquis, but well, Starfleet don't call them Maquis. It's more the other way around. But it does make sense to drop the story arc.
Yeah, I mean,
not enough Ensign Ro, I think, in TNG though, because this is the introduction of a character. There's not enough Ensign Ro in TNG. This is the introduction to a great character, which I thought they could have built more upon, but they didn't.
I don't know the behind this. This is usually where the Doctor sometimes sheds a little light, but certainly there's a lot of backstory out there about why and this and that, and why she left the show and why she didn't want to do Deep Space Nine. But as fate would have it, that was the case, and then so we have what we have, which is glorious. And here is the Doctor. Look at that.
Here it is.
You're right on time. We're talking about Ensign Ro. I was gonna make the point that it was interesting to find out that Ensign Ro was supposed to be the character that Deep Space Nine was going to be founded on, and that Michelle Forbes' decision to not continue with this character ultimately launched an amazing show anyways, and we got the familiar cast of characters that we have, including Major Kira, who then becomes the Bajoran template in our minds, the idea of what a Bajoran is and stuff like that. So
I agree.
Welcome to the season 5 recap, Doctor.
Thank you. That's it. That's his opinion.
It's so nice to have you. We went as slow as possible to get you here. So
Why? I'm sorry. I apologize for the lateness of the hour.
No, we really wanted you. So we'll move the discussion right along, but I think Ensign Ro got a pretty high rating from us, if I recall.
Well. I can tell you my ratings each time if you want, because I have.
Yeah, you can. I don't remember, honestly.
You're prepared. That's great.
Yeah, I know. He's like,
that's such a wow. That's completely opposite to everybody else here.
Well, I mean, he said that he was prepared for season 1, the season 1 recap.
I had everyone's ratings, but I've gotten more casual and informal as time has gone.
Much more casual and informal. Yes.
Informal. Doctor, any little thoughts on Ensign Ro before we talk about Silicon Avatar?
No, not really.
So this was an interesting episode. I remember the discussion. We talked about the crystalline entity and wondered about it, and then we found out some interesting facts from the books about how they live in a kind of a very specific region of space, and they rarely venture outside of that, and how we wondered if lore had lured it, and how it became a man-eater, or how it became like a threat to life forms. So I thought this was a great episode. I think I don't remember what my rating was, but I do remember it was definitely above a 5. I love the performances in this episode, and yeah, it was just another pretty good episode coming into season 5.
What's always interesting to me about in these season recaps is just what are the elements from previous seasons that come back. What are the elements that don't come back? And this was an example of a character. Well, I mean, the Silicon Avatar is not really a character, but something, a menace, let's say, that returned from a previous season, because it was first seen in, was it season 1 or?
Yeah,
season 1.
I think it was season 1, because it was pretty much when they introduced Data, wasn't it?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So it was a surprise to me that of all the things to return, the Silicon Avatar is is one of the things that comes back. I never expected that. I certainly never expected that to happen.
It's interesting to think that this crystalline entity is like a recurring villain. Like it's actually a thing floating around Federation space, just killing people.
Yeah, it's like the in the original Trek, the what do you call that? The cornucopia of doom, the thing that eats.
Oh, the Planet
Starfleet,
Eater.
That thing.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
that thing. Yeah, they're just like this
the
little thing.
cornucopia of doom. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of floating around, eating starships. I mean, I like those. I like those kinds of foes. Those things that just kind of float around and you know, they're like road hazards. You know.
There's like a Moby Dick quality.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, when someone's obsessed
To
about
both of
destroying it, yeah. Which I guess that also fits the description in this episode, because certainly the professor, whoever, I forget what her name was, she was obsessed with destroying it.
Star Trek's obsessed with Moby Dick. It comes up quite often.
It does.
It's interesting.
It does.
Anyways, then we get Poseidon Adventure in Space Disaster.
Oh, yeah.
Which I recall being a fun episode to watch. And it also was, as Gary has beautifully illustrated in this image, it was also Captain Picard Day, which has become a celebrated kind of meme / unofficial holiday among nerds and Star Trek fans. I couldn't tell you what day Captain Picard Day is off the top of my head. I just find out about it when it's happening and celebrate in the moment. But every day can be Captain Picard Day.
I think every day is Captain Picard Day for you, Sal.
This is true, especially since hearing about the Picard show. It's 100% true. But anyways, I also rated this one high, if I recall correctly. I can't recall any of my major qualms with this episode either. I thought it was just a fun little romp through there. It sets up a few interesting little things, like the detachment of Data's head in the scene that Gary's also referencing. Riker has to take Data's head and bring it to engineering. I don't know if you remember that, and that kind of echoes later on in the season, ironically, when we find Data's head at the end of the in Time Zero in the cavern in San Francisco. So I thought that was kind of a cool thing, that like getting audiences used to Data being beheaded. What would have been great is if, and there's still an opportunity to do this, but wouldn't it be great if there was a time travel episode that explained the legend of Sleepy Hollow with Data being the headless horseman?
God.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
God, where does your mind go to? What the hell?
You know, really, I mean, it's
that's
bizarre.
not a stretch. That's not a stretch. Come on, headless person, Data, no head. Like, it could happen. It could totally. He could. In fact, that might be a fun Halloween costume.
Is the head, right? I mean.
Moving on to the next one.
Anything to say about this one, Sean? Did you, in your rewatches, do you recall anything about Disaster?
Not much. It's not like an episode that I think stands out too much. It's not a bad one. It just doesn't stand out too much in my mind.
Here's another iconic episode, but not for what the reasons you would think. It's iconic because Star Trek fans remember it as the appearance of Robin Leffler, played by Ashley Judd.
Does she come back? She comes back, right, for another episode?
Yeah, I think this is. No, I think that maybe there's one more, but I think
I think there is one more, right?
There might be one more.
Or is this her second appearance?
This might be the second appearance. I can't remember. Okay. I'm a bad Star Trek fan, but
I think this might be her second appearance, perhaps.
And it's also an episode that we get a way to get Wesley back in the mix. He comes home from the academy before his later in the same season his delinquency blooms, and we find out that he's actually a terrible person. But anyways, in this episode, we see Wesley growing up a little bit, and he helps to thwart an evil and somewhat strange plan by a group of aliens that want to infiltrate the Federation using a video game. Not necessarily a bad plan, but they put all their eggs in this basket and.
This is a bad episode.
This is a terrible episode.
This is a bad episode.
I gave it a 4. Okay, look, it's an iconic episode. I remember it, but not because it's good. It has this it has the meme quality to it, right? It has this meme quality with the game and everything, but it really is shit. The plan is dumb. The aliens are stupid. It's not something, and ultimately, though it is fun, to think about the game in a way, it doesn't make sense anymore.
No, it's a really bad episode.
So
can we revise lower our ratings during the season?
Yes.
Can we go lower? Because I think Sean may want to go lower. I gave it like a 2 or a 3. I think.
4 is fine. Leave it at 4.
4? Okay, if you insist.
Well, I'm not insisting. It's just that's what it was. I'm not going to say. Look, we already have like one person too much changing his ratings all the time. We're making them too high for no
you're
reason.
Right. You're right. You're right. Let's hold.
Oh, wow.
Let's hold firm.
Nice subtle jab there. So Unification Part 1 and Unification Part 2, I'm going to bundle both of those into the same.
Why did you use that?
Here.
Why did they use that picture of Picard? He's I don't know. It's not the best picture.
Gary has full carte blanche to.
He seems
to do
kind of
he likes. I hope Gary hears this.
Looks like a
I like it.
Right?
Oh my
I don't know. It's like a shit-eating grin there. It's like, what's wrong with Picard there? I don't know what Gary's trying to do here with Picard.
Gary, I like this image, but if you happen to be hearing this, Gary, the doctor thinks you should have used a different image of Picard. What doctor? What recommend an image that he should?
I will next
instead?
time. Yeah.
Okay.
For our remastered version of Starfleet Boy, I'll suggest an updated image.
This is a good image for Unification Part 2, though.
Well, Spock is puzzled by the first image. He's kind of looking quizzically like, why did they use Picard? He doesn't understand either.
Oh, boy.
Just made a narrative between 2 thumbnails.
Yeah.
Oh boy. This is deep Starfleet Boy canon here. This is some deep stuff. Only true Starfleet Boy fans will be cracking up at this. And those of us that participate willingly and unwillingly. By the way, Doctor, you came up in an interesting side conversation. Someone was talking about Starfleet Boy, and they were praising the show. And to them, the highlight was they said, I like you and I like everyone, but I keep watching, hoping that the Doctor is going to be on more. And I was like, what?
Like, no, you're just stroking the ego.
It's true. And Sean, don't you get a little sad when the Doctor's not here?
I am. I'm disappointed. First of all, it makes the ratings better, doesn't it? But
wow, I'm like the special guest star, huh?
Well, we need your knowledge. You're the man with the knowledge.
The knowledge.
We appreciate you. Yeah, or at the very least, even if he doesn't have the knowledge, he's there to balance my.
He is, and he's also got the that book, that one book.
That's right, 2 books. He's got 2 books. He's got the Star Trek Companion, Exploration Companion, and he's got the guide, the field guide to the.
I've got many books, let me tell you.
Well, there's the one where the guy talks about his alien species.
Yeah, that's a classic one. I love that. That.
I think everyone involved with this discussion gave Unification really high marks. I think it's a wonderful 2-parter. I loved the way Spock was reintroduced into the series. I recall, Sean, you do have a couple of critiques about Unification Part 1 and Part 2, and also a gigantic beef with Star Trek, which is you think that the story emphasizes Spock. The overall Star Trek is too much about Spock.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
It kind of like, yeah, so that's like something that was an interesting point of discussion that came from. I don't think we talked about it on this episode when we talked about Unification, but
I wasn't on Unification
right.
1 and 2. It's not okay.
Right.
This isn't one of my favorite 2-parters, right? It's not fantastic. I'm also aggravated at the fact that he doesn't have any ridges on his face, and no one seems to mind. And they didn't even take the time to show any Romulans that have no ridges, which at least could have made sense. I mean, yeah, people on my channel get mad because I beef about the Discovery Klingons, right? And then they say you don't have these kind of complaints for TNG. I do. This is ridiculous.
Actually, it's true.
That is true. That is true. And I think even you agreed that we may have. I mean, the problem with unification is you get caught up with the whole thing of, oh, it's Spock, he's back, but afterwards there's always that lingering, like, gosh, it could have been better. When we gave our rating on the air, we gave it pretty high, but I know I think realistically I should have rated it a little bit lower, because the ending is just a complete cop out.
Spock is not the best part of this episode. Sarek is. The two
in the first part, yeah.
But the whole emotional thing with Sarek, dying, giving his memories to Picard, the impact that has, like Picard now like he has all of the memories of Spock. What is it? Cybok, Sarek, Burnham. Picard is the most knowledgeable person.
But then all of this
knowledge.
But then all of this knowledge gets passed to Kelvin Kirk, who is the Uber. He's the true.
Every mind meld that Spock has ever done, every mind meld that Sarek has ever done,
everyone.
Like friggin' Picard has the memory of speaking with that rock from the original series, right?
The Horta.
Yeah, the Horta.
Well, I think that the one good thing that comes out of Star Trek Discovery, showing that the mind meld can kind of create these like interesting links or even enhance an individual's abilities by having this kind of like knowledge of Katra kind of mixed with your own knowledge or consciousness.
What is Discovery?
Anyways,
is that a video game?
I think Star Trek 4 for Kelvin could have been really trippy and weird, and they could have like somehow bridged it right back into the Prime timeline by somehow using this whole idea of a mind meld as a link between the two universes.
I think that if they made a Kelvin timeline movie that somehow directly connects to Discovery, they would have riots. Because
that's for sure.
People aren't fans of the Kelvin timeline. They come in warming up to it because it's its own pocket thing. But then people aren't really fans of Discovery. If you start mixing them both together, I mean,
that's an explosive cocktail. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like it or not, it does seem that the hero of unification,
and that it's all about Spock, so they're gonna give us a story with the two Spocks together, like Zachary Quinto and what is it, Adam?
Oh my god!
my lumberjack Spock.
You know that would happen, right? You know that's what they'll do.
No, don't say things like that. They listen.
They'll call it Spock Squared.
Spock Squared.
Well,
I just want to go on record that as far as Leonard Nimoy is the only true Spock. But okay.
So we move on to A Matter of Time, which was an interesting episode where supposed
look at that guy up in the top left.
What's that?
Look at that guy's face up on the top left. He doesn't look perfect. He doesn't look better than Picard.
All right, guys.
They're just in shock, really. They're like, wow, why'd they choose that image?
I'm sorry, you wanted to make this all professional.
Go ahead.
I'm ruining this.
No, you guys are great. It's fine. It's the recap show. Ta-da! So
Gary's never gonna make these again when we're done.
No, he actually just sent me the season 6 images, and they are gorgeous.
Okay,
I love them.
All right.
I love them all. I'm very grateful to Gary, and
we're
we
grateful
all
as well, especially right now.
Oh, jeez, you guys are clowns. Anyways, A Matter of Time was a fun little episode with an interesting twist, and I remember always liking this episode. So
question, did anybody want this character to return somehow?
God, no.
I did.
Oh, split vote.
What
Why?
about you, Doctor?
Why?
Why bring him back?
Yeah, because you guys like the actor.
Yeah, we do.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You like the actor.
Yeah.
Don't bring the actor back. Don't bring the character.
You figured
Well,
it
they could have
out.
improved the character.
You figured us out.
Bring the actor
You
back.
I mean,
figured
it
us
did
out.
seem like there was potential. Like maybe he'd be, you know, I don't know.
No.
Thought it was interesting.
No. I liked the very threatening data that we had at the end of the episode.
That was very cool. It's true.
Is this
It
moment
shows
when he gets all mad at this guy or whatever, and he's like, he gets all threatening, but he gets very cold with his threats. I like that.
New Ground. This was an episode where Alexander. It's an Alexander episode. It's the introduction of Brian Bonsall in the role of Alexander. If I'm
This
not
episode
mistaken.
sucks.
Can you remember this episode, Sean? Sean, did you watch this? Did you see this episode?
It has a 4. All right.
So
Not only does it have a 4, but I don't remember a single thing about this episode. It was wiped from my memory.
No, I think this is the one where is this the one where the grandmother dumps Alexander on the Enterprise?
Yes.
You know, this is the kind of crap. This shows when Next Generation for me just started taking a slight turn towards the crappiness. You know, because I don't understand what is the point of giving Worf a kid.
I like Alexander as a character, though. It's just that the relationship wasn't well developed.
Well,
It's fine. There's an amazing story with this like time traveling Alexander and shit later on.
that's later on. But I mean,
Okay.
that's the only thing but it's not worth all the 7 crappy episodes with Alexander that we get before that. I just think it makes Worf look bad. I really
He's a cute kid. Look at him.
No, yeah. But I think it was the Worf as a character looks terrible whenever you bring Alexander out because
He is the worst father in all of Star
he's
Trek.
the
Isn't he?
worst father in like all of Star Trek. And that's comparing him to Sarek, who's also not a great dad. Let's just say,
No.
Sarek's a terrible father. But Worf is just horrible. So I don't understand why Next Generation kept insisting on bringing Alexander back. I mean, honestly, I think we would have been better served if they had killed him.
And then
Killed
oddly-
Alexander?
Killed off Alexander,
Oddly-
given Worf some more angst, and then it would have been good melodramatic material that would have been a lot better than all those crappy Alexander episodes where he's alive. I mean,
Oddly enough, we spend a lot of time with family and children this season. So here we go.
This was a shit episode as well, by the way.
as I said, this is when Star Trek naturally started going towards towards crap. But okay,
It is interesting to note that, yeah, it is a little. I mean, you know how I feel about Star Trek Administration, but I will concede and say that it is interesting to note that they went on this like weird experiment. What was the point? Like, were they trying to get more family-friendly episodes out there? Was there a critique at the time that Star Trek might have been too dark, or it wasn't? Was it not favoring well for? Because its time slot was definitely a family time slot, but maybe they thought more kids were needed.
Adding kids to any movie or any television series is never the solution.
never. And kids agree on that too.
It always
I
makes things
agree, too.
worse.
Well, as a kid, I didn't like
Especially
it.
if you have them speak. Logan isn't too bad because she doesn't speak for half the movie.
Right.
Interesting.
No, I
If you
agree.
have a kid and you have to make them act like there's like a few movies that I can really appreciate with a kid, The Sixth Sense. But
That's once in a blue moon. Yeah.
it is. It's like
But
the
what about
exception,
in
right?
TV? Are there TV shows where you have a child character where it worked well? Because like
No.
we know young kids don't seem to work
none
well.
come to mind.
Wesley
None.
didn't work well.
Well,
it
you know
seems-
what?
but-
In defense of Wesley, I think
I like Wesley.
yeah,
I like him.
I think
looked
overall
up to him as a kid.
he wasn't that bad. I think what the problem was that it's very hard to believe that Beverly's his mother sometimes because she just shows him no affection. But I think Wesley as a character wasn't bad. I think the only I mean, so far the only realistic parent-child depiction on Star Trek is on Deep Space Nine. I think the relationship between Jake and Cisco is very it just feels very genuine, and it's easier because they're he's an older kid. I think it's when you start them off real young, like in the case of Alexander.
Well, and in Deep Space Nine,
Nog and Rom also have this kind of relationship.
Well,
which is interesting.
but
that's true. Yeah,
I think it's set up really nicely, and then Jake and Nog becoming best friends. So I think that you're right. It's because they actually like thought it out. I think where it's not just throwing a kid in, like they actually had a story to tell.
Not only that, but I think that show just had a better ensemble feel to it, which Next Generation, as much as it wants to pretend that it's an ensemble show, it really isn't. I mean, there's by the end of Deep Space Nine, it's very easy to argue who are the major characters in the show, because there's so many characters that, I mean, if you just look at the finale, there's so many things, so many subplots that come into play, and there's so many the way the characters intersect with each other and all that stuff. It's very easy for somebody to make the argument, well, it's this guy and this guy is a main character, and so is a main character. But on Next Generation, especially by this season, it's very clear that you have two tiers. You've got Picard and Data at the top.
And Worf. I would throw Worf.
And Worf, that's correct. And Worf, right under Data. And then you've got the rest of them. And they just kind of each take turns getting the scraps. And sometimes the scraps are good and sometimes they're not. But,
poor Troy gets the short end of the stick when it comes to scraps. And so then next we go to this episode, Violations, which was a really weird episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, talking about oh god, yeah, okay, this isn't good. This isn't good either.
He is just his mind is blown by that makeup, that image.
Oh, he looks like a 90s villain. He looks like he comes out of Blade Runner, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
God.
Well, anyways, we get a somewhat interesting but obvious plot, and I don't really know if I have anything else to say about it. The Masterpiece Society, which I thought was a fun, interesting episode. This one takes place on an isolated society that has a perfect balance, so that everything's optimized to the best. But unfortunately, a natural disaster in the form of an asteroid is headed their way, and they have to now deal with the balance in their society being thrown off by one of their several of their members wanting to leave. And then we also get a little romance for Counselor Troy. She gets to have a relationship with the prime minister of their society.
I think I gave this
one a
7. I think this was actually a pretty good example of this is an example of good 80s Star Trek, 90s Star Trek.
It's pretty out there. Yeah, it was a pretty cool story. Do you remember this one, Sean? Did you? I don't know if you were on that discussion.
I don't think you was.
I wasn't on this discussion, so I don't have a rating for this. I'd have to actually go back and rewatch it if I really wanted to give it a rating.
The next episode was Conundrum, which I kind of remember our discussion. We were a little not one of those episodes that really stood the test of time per se, because the twist ends up being a little implausible when you really think about it.
It's not bad an episode though. I quite enjoy it. It's too obvious because of that guy, right?
Well, not just that, like the enemy that they're fighting has like significantly lower technology, but yet they're able to make the entire crew of the Enterprise forget, including Data. I think that was like, this is like, we were like, well, they can't destroy, they need the Enterprise to destroy this to get an advantage weapon wise, but yet they have this crazy other technology that you would think like, wow, like, they definitely focused on the wrong thing. So that was like one of those things that I thought was weird about this episode. Power play. This is the episode. The episode where they get possessed, except Riker.
This is the prison ghosts on the planet that, you know.
The prison ghosts. That's right. That's it. Did we call them the prison?
I don't
call
think
them
so,
the prison ghosts?
But they put themselves in the bodies of, and then like, so Deanna Troi has that voice again.
The one where she's possessed.
Oh yeah.
Does she do the possessed voice again?
Oh yeah.
I will destroy you. You are dead. I am. that was, it's true. I don't remember the rating for this, but I don't remember it being like terribly.
I wasn't too impressed with it.
I liked it.
We had a nice discussion on ethics. I remember this discussion really well, Sean, because we talked about a lot about the ethics involved and like. But Doctor, this is the episode where Dr. Crusher.
I know what this episode is.
Yeah. Do you have anything to say about it?
I think
he thinks it's the episode where they should have killed Alexander.
Yeah, there we go.
Oh my God.
You guys are terrible.
Somehow
he
he could have died to give his spine over to his father or something. They could have like.
I did this episode with my friend Jared, and this episode is the episode I used to introduce him to Star Trek. And it ended up being a really lively and interesting discussion where obviously it got a little bit timely and political. And we talked a lot about gender and gender reassignment and how society views that, and how this episode was originally meant as a discussion point for homosexuality and a way to kind of flip the notions that people had about homosexuality on their heads a little. And I think it was widely met with criticism, saying that they should have just addressed homosexuality if that's what they were trying to do, instead of hiding it behind this. But ironically,
do you remember that? Is that really what happened?
I do actually remember that. I actually remember that sentiment being expressed in our group, even, I think.
Oh,
but
really?
anyways,
okay.
I disagree. I think this episode is better done this way, because I don't like when Star Trek is too on the nose. I prefer it to be hidden in some sort of sci-fi concept, even if the sci-fi concept is like a shitty forehead ridge, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
I do agree with Jonathan Frakes, though, that they should have cast a man, but the producers weren't ballsy enough, and so they went for a woman. But Jonathan Frakes was all for casting a man, and he was good with doing the scenes. So they should have done that. They should have gone for that choice. But I have no problem with the fact that they didn't directly address homosexuality. In the same way, I wouldn't want Discovery to specifically single out, a head of state or anything.
I don't disagree at all. I think you're actually on the nose, but for a different reason. The reason why is because that choice 20 years later actually ends up making this episode super relevant, because now this is a discussion point in our society, which is, the alien race that was created here is genderless. They are abhorred by the idea of male or female. So they're all, so the concept of they, the pronoun for they, all that stuff that we're talking about now in society as we struggle to, integrate all kinds of notions, including the whole concept of being non-binary into society. Here in Star Trek is a template for that kind of discussion and that kind of interaction way ahead of its time. So I think
do you guys have an opinion on that, by the way?
Yeah, I think my opinion is the same for anything that's like deeply personal about someone's sexuality or their gender or how they feel about what they are inside, which is to each his own. And feel free to explain. Forgive me for not understanding if I'm interacting with you and I come across as insensitive, and explain to me how to not be insensitive. So I think it's like case by case. I think that is important that governments and states protect everyone's rights, and I think that's really where the the struggle comes in, is like, how do you do that? Like, how specific does the language in legislature need to be? And I think that, like, you know, there's I think, you know, protection for any ideology is paramount in moving forward as a civilization, so long as that ideology does not hurt another.
Bringing it back to the show, I think it's interesting that Riker was chosen as the main focus to interact with this issue. I think Jonathan Frakes kind of gets the short end of the stick as the seasons go on. I don't think he gets a choice pick for many episodes going forward. It's almost like he peaks at Best of Both Worlds, the two-parter, as a character. Like, he doesn't grow much beyond that. But an episode like this keeps him, you know, relevant to the series, you know. So I thought it was interesting that Riker was used to explore the themes in this episode. Cool.
Yeah. Obviously this episode can strike a discussion at any point, so I think there's value to episodes like that, and that's why I thought it was a great way to introduce my friend to Star Trek. He is going to keep watching, and he's going to come back on in a future episode. So my next episode that I give him maybe won't be as controversial and stark. Speaking of controversy, we go now to the first duty, or as we said in our discussion, a few good men in space. Who ordered the code red?
Code red. What?
This is the episode that that kind of like humanizes and disgraces Wesley and shows that he can make really stupid mistakes, and you know, he's not as infallible as we've
had prior proof of that, but
this is really a big deal.
No, yeah, I get it, yeah.
This isn't an episode so much about like showing how Wesley isn't, as you say. It's more about like, I don't know. It's weird. Like, how do they do this? They do it in a way that it shows you that you're allowed to make mistakes if you're when you're young. But I don't know. This isn't focused like this. This isn't an episode made for people that are inherently, bad kids in the first place. This is made for kids that are already very good kids. If that makes sense.
I guess yeah. I mean,
it's probably good. Yeah, kids watch Next Generation.
I think the episode works.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think the episode definitely works as a moral tale, or what is that? Is that a parable or something like that? Like,
no, it's not a parable.
Yes, well, I guess not. Yeah. So, anyways, but as a moral tale, it definitely works to do that, because I do remember that watching it and thinking like, dang, Wesley's fucked. Like, it's like he has to redo a whole year of the academy. It's always going to be on his permanent record. Like, Wesley is disgraced, basically. I mean, it is kind of like a big deal for his character. I mean, like, he was the quintessential straight A student, Ivy League, type personality that is revered in society, like the golden boy or girl, as those types are often referred to. So I thought it was important when Star Trek, this episode to me kind of stood out for that. For him, and also like in much the similar way that stories like Redemption give depth to characters like Worf. This is like, I think, obviously a defining moment in the Wesley character, and later on we get even more interesting moments with him. But certainly up until this point, I thought this was a pretty good episode, and I loved our discussion because Sean didn't care an ounce about Boothby. And later on,
my wife and my mother said that he was a great character and that it was important to have the episode. And I was thoroughly.
You know what I think is interesting to note is that the next generation at this point is still willing to use a character like Wesley, so a semi-regular. I think I'm of two minds with these semi-regular characters, because to a certain extent, not so much with Wesley because he has a lot of close ties with Picard and in theory with his mother. So bringing back a character like Wesley every once in a while helps refresh those relationships and brings Picard and Crusher to the fore. I wish there had been more semi-regular characters for the other cast. Somebody. I mean, Barclay's a good example. Barclay obviously has close ties with Geordi, working in engineering. But I would have liked to have seen something, more like Barclay, more like Wesley, where we get these semi-regulars that come back to the show, and they help. Obviously, they're the focus of the episode, but they also bring supporting characters to the main focus as well with them, And in the case of Wesley, you would think that his mom would have had more to do during Wesley episodes, but again, it's almost like Picard is the parent, and Beverly
in that episode one. In episode 1, the bridge adopts Wesley Crusher, right? And I get the sense that it's the bridge crew that's going to be taking care of him, and then in season 2, Crusher's like off, so you really get the sense that he's a child of the crew, not a child of Beverly Crusher.
Yeah,
but then I'm not a fan of Beverly Crusher as a character, so I'm not one to speak too much on this.
Well, I mean, that I think that's a genuine criticism of Beverly Crusher. Again, it doesn't make her look like a really good mom. She doesn't seem to take much. The show never wrote many scenes between mother and son that fleshed out that relationship. I think. I mean, it was. I think it was a wasted opportunity. But anyways. Moving on, next episode.
Moving on to The Perfect Mate, which you were not there for this discussion, I don't think. Were you there, Doctor?
No, I missed Famke Janssen and the great Dr. Hewer.
Yes, Dr. Hewer. I missed you on this episode because when I revered them, Sean gave no fucks. He could care.
for Famke Janssen.
Yes,
really.
I had to ask him to imagine his wife in her place for him to get into the fantasy.
Is she considered a very hot woman in the United States? Is she considered like
everywhere? Not just the she was
not anymore. I mean, she was. She was. Yes.
Famke still got it, but anyways, worldwide, Sean, worldwide.
Have you not seen GoldenEye?
Oh, a long time ago. It doesn't count. So my mother watched it, and I watched it as a kid, so I wouldn't remember it correctly.
You need to rewatch it and learn to appreciate Xena Onatopp.
Okay. I'll maybe do a James Bond rewatch someday.
There we go. We should do that on Starfleet Boy.
But this was a great episode from the perspective of just the chemistry was really good between the two of them, and of course we get more of that chemistry in a different light in the X-Men films between Patrick Stewart and
I just realized that. I didn't realize that. That's right.
That's the
Gray, and that's Professor X. Holy.
That's right. It's correct.
Oh, okay.
And
like a 3 though, but whatever.
Wait, what's that?
The rating is still like a 3, but whatever.
Oh wow, I rated it much higher. What did you give it, Sean? I can't remember.
I gave it a 3.
Yeah, it's a 3. I mean, it's not a good episode at all.
No, it isn't. It isn't. Okay,
it's a really crappy episode.
Speaking of crappy episodes, this episode, Imaginary Friend, definitely fits that. And again, more of
there is someone in the wow. There is someone who commented on our episode discussion that said they actually liked the episode, and we're sad.
I think that's Chris Collins. Shout
What
out
episode is this?
This is
you don't want to know, Sean.
The Enterprise is stuck in a nebula with these like red string-like filaments, and this alien that originally looks like a ball of energy turns into this girl and sees the Enterprise and humanity from the perspective of a child and thinks that like humans are actually oppressors and like awful, and she threatens to kill everyone on the ship until Picard explains.
I have no memory of this. There's a child, so it's shit.
Yeah. The solution is that Picard has to explain to her that you materialized as a child, so that's why you're seeing things from that perspective. But I promise you, we love our children. And then that's, I don't know, it's something like that.
Go away.
I'm going to quote now from the book. It's worth quoting once again.
Okay.
This is once again Field Guide to the Aliens of Star Trek Next Generation by Joshua Chapman, age 4. These are some energy balls. These aliens are some energy balls, but they can take the shape of people if they want to. Also, they can read people's minds somehow if they fly into someone's head. It seems like whenever there is an alien made out of energy on this show, they're always ball-shaped. One of them turns into the imaginary friend of a girl, and she is pretty much the worst person alive in Star Trek. She's manipulative, bitchy, and vindictive. Everyone on the Enterprise is ready to forgive her, even though she summons a bunch of other energy balls to murder them. But fuck that. I know what it is like to have someone treat you this way, and you don't forgive them. It is so fucking ridiculous how much this alien reminds me of my mom. And that is
all right.
Okay, so Burnham wasn't the character yet at that point.
Oh my god! All right, I Borg is one of my favorite episodes ever, and we learned on Starfleet Boy that the reason is I had a crush on Hugh the Borg.
You had a crush on Hugh the Borg? Oh my god!
Which was taboo to talk about at the time. It was very taboo.
Oh my god, you got that Borg love.
The only thing taboo is to say that this episode is good.
I loved it. I thought it was a good episode. And it holds up. But I'm not wrong, actually. It is a fan favorite. And Hugh the Borg is a character that apparently many young Starfleet boys and girls out there could relate to for some reason. And I think it has to do with just individuality, and how at that age is especially a time when humans start to solidify their ideas of themselves as individuals. The next phase, which was the episode where Geordi and Ro initially think they're dead, but it turns out they're out of phase just by a little bit, enough to not be able to see.
Why is he laughing? Why is he laughing?
I just love the secondary image of these guys. It's like the Cujas Cantina scene back there. I'm like, this is great.
I remember
they're happy. They're just happy that we're nearing the end of the season. And
I remember in our discussion,
they're like, yay.
I remember in our discussion we really liked this episode.
I was not in that discussion, so
I like.
What did you give it?
I think it's a good one. I gave it a 7.5. I think it's a good episode.
Oh my god, no! This is like a 4.
Oh come on!
No, come on!
Oh, I don't know.
It's wasted. It's a real waste. Too.
That I agree with. It's an interesting experience in a Rowan, but I do like the dynamic between her and Geordi. He's a very scientific kind of method, and she's got these boring Bajoran traditions because Bajorans are boring. We established that. But
we come at last to the inner light, which was just around the corner as far as we're concerned. We were just on that discussion, and I think we all love this episode. Think of it as iconic. I was surprised by the Doctor's rating being lower than a 10. You now have a chance, Doctor, to...
No. What? No. I don't think so. The rating that I gave it is the rating that I think I gave it I think I gave it an 8, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a fine showcase for Patrick Stewart's acting, but it's not an episode that I'm going to jump at. Oh my God, the inner light is on. Let me watch it. It's not. It really isn't. It's not.
It is that for me. So interesting.
That's all in what you want from Star Trek. I want a few more phaser battles.
I give it a 9 though, because I think it's really one of the it really within the context of TNG, it is really one of the best episodes of Star Trek. We did discuss about the fact that you can't just random show it to someone. But,
yeah.
And we came up with some interesting theories about the Catanians and how they may have sent out many probes and how there might be artifacts and they could all form an orchestra coming together, which I thought was
right.
Funny.
Yeah.
Times Arrow Part 1.
We do go into some shenanigans.
We didn't have the Doctor on this episode, but we had a very lively discussion, Sean and I, on this one, and we both really liked it, if I recall correctly, Sean. I better recall correctly. It was just last week that we talked about it.
Absolute shit. No, I liked it. I don't know how someone could not like Times Arrow Parts 1 and 2. I think it's a great time travel story. And with this episode,
be sure to tune in to Times Arrow discussion Part 2 to learn the answer to that.
Oh wow, okay. Anyway, so talking about Part 1 specifically, I think it's a great introduction to this story, and I think it's a great into the season.
Sets up an interesting new dynamic for Guinan. Wait, what was that?
The strongest of seasons, is it? Season 5?
Yeah, I mean, actually, looking back on it, I would say that the season is a lot weaker than I remembered it being. In my mind,
it's got the inner light, it's got Darmok, it's got those standout episodes, but then the rest of it is kind of just kids.
Well, before we talk about the whole season, Doctor, a quick chime in on Times Arrow Part 1, since you were not at that discussion, but I know you wanted to be a part of it. So, what did you have to say about that episode? That if you had been on,
I'll just say quickly, I do enjoy the premise with those aliens. I enjoy the aliens that they found,
the Davidians.
Yeah, I think that's the setup for them is very impressive, and I really like the look, and they're very creepy, and they actually remind me of elements from Twin Peaks, for people who watch Twin Peaks, the evil spirits that are also Spoilers. Oh well, sorry. But it reminded me a lot of that, and I mean, it does. Obviously, it's got one of the best hooks in terms of a mystery. Finding Data's head there. But I thought Mark Twain was a bit overused. I'm not a big fan of using historical characters in situations where then you have to wonder, well, why didn't Mark Twain ever mention that he ran into aliens in his, in his letters? I mean, I just unless the show can come up with a like Doctor Who, well, the old Doctor Who would come up with a clever way to say, well, why didn't so and so never write that the Doctor was there or something like that? But I don't think Star Trek does a very good job of explaining why Mark Twain.
I have a similar issue, but not for the same reasons. I don't like the fact that they use Mark. Well, it's fun to have Mark Twain, but I would have preferred that they not use it. But not so much because he never mentioned it, more because I feel like when they use historical characters, they become parodies of the historical characters rather than actually being them.
Yeah, it's a caricature. Yeah,
yeah. So when you bring in actual scientists or actual people from today and have them cameo as people from the past, they cameo themselves, as if they were from the past. That works.
There's definitely times where it's done really well, because I can think of specifically in Doctor Who, the Charles Dickens episode relates because it sets up.
I mentioned the classic show, not the new show.
Oh, okay. but what I will say is that that episode stands out to me as a case where a historical figure works, because the portrayal is pretty good by the actor, darn it, whose name I can't remember, but he's a cherished actor in the Shakespearean world, and also because it kind of ties right into the Mystery of Edmund Drood, which is Dickens's last novel, and there's a lot of cool references, and it's conceivable that Dickens would have left out the things because the events, because but taken like little bits of them and put them into A Christmas Carol and other things, throughout his later works, because he was obsessed with like kind of the supernatural and things like that, especially in Edmund Drood. But anyways, it works and it doesn't work sometimes. Here, I do have to agree that like I like the actor the way he portrayed Mark Twain as kind of like a rascally figure who's hard-headed but also mischievous, and you definitely see him in his prominence here. Like he's definitely like famous at this point, and like that kind of thing. But I do agree that it is kind of like a stretch to imagine that it didn't have an effect on him, and like that he wouldn't mention such a thing.
Yeah. So the season as a whole, I think we're already starting to say that it doesn't. It's a bit weaker, I think, than certainly than the third or the fourth, I think, and I think it's really done in by a glut of episodes that focus on children, young children, and I mean it's got the standout episodes, but I can't help but think that this I'll always remember this season as the season that kind of killed the Borg for me until First Contact, the movie. That's kind of and in a way it kind of killed the Romulans for me too. Huh?
They have the lore and Borg story arc later on, though, don't they?
But they lose some of the menace with the Hugh episode.
Humanized races, and every franchise does this to every alien they ever create. They humanize them,
but so early. I mean, the Borg were so menacing just in their last. We've really only had two appearances of the Borg, the two-parter, and then their first appearance. And this is the third. In the third appearance, we're going to say, okay, guys, we're done with the menace. We're done with them being just the perfect villains for Star Trek. Let's humanize them. It's hard for me to forgive. And it wasn't until First Contact that they kind of gained that back and reclaimed the title of really the best villains Next Generation ever had.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I still like it. I still like Hugh. I still think that like it doesn't humanize the Borg. It actually makes them worse, in my opinion, because there's some evidence that Hugh was one of these baby Borg that we see in the Best of Both Worlds, and it just makes me feel like like inside of this, like it would be more humanizing if they were truly a collective. But the fact that you could break away from that collective and then find your individuality, that there is in fact a soul inside this being that may want something more than to be part of this like collective consciousness, tells me that they're actually worse than I thought they were. I will say that like yes, it's kind of, that's kind of a stretch. Like that's like definitely using, that's definitely using some like headcanon, if you will, but that's just the way I see it, the perspective that I see it from. And I love Hugh. Hugh the Vorg is a cool character.
Comparatively, I know that, like, so we talk about this season. Technically, Deep Space Nine hadn't come out yet, but if you were to compare this to the episode where they humanize a Jem'Hadar kid, they find a Jem'Hadar baby, grows up. That's a much better example of this race cannot be reasoned with, or this species is a true threat that we cannot deal with in the Federation ways. Because the idea is the Federation and Starfleet always try to find an amicable way of dealing with things, a diplomatic way. But then the Jem'Hadar, it's proven that you cannot, because they're literally bred to kill.
Yeah.
And if they're not under Contracell White, they kill even more, and they kill even more sporadically.
Right.
And that's a better example than having this Borg, because then ultimately it shows that you can kind of fix the Borg. And then they have this, they send like a virus in them. They try to hack the collective. Is that what they try to do?
Well,
it's kind of weird.
It's interesting that in our discussion of the season, we focus so much on this one episode. It's obviously the episode.
It's one of the great sins of the season. I mean, really. I mean, all the bad episodes is very easy to just forget. But this is a sin of the season that continues to infect the season.
Next season's closer, as a matter of fact.
Right. I mean,
you're talking about is the season 6 closer.
Right. Precisely. And then the other great sin, I think, is I'm probably going to be alone in this, but the Romulans. I think I've been saying since season 1, the Romulan menace. Oh, it's coming. There's a buildup, and they you get these episodes that it feels like we're going to get this great confrontation with the Romulans at last. And really, this is it for the Romulans.
That is Star Trek tradition, though, because they do this whole thing with the Klingons as well in the original series, but nothing ever happens with the Klingons.
But you know what? With the Klingons, I'll say this: Star Trek 3 kind of felt. You had...
Okay, we get a Klingon falling off a cliff into lava, and we get all that. But, I mean, you're talking about the movies. If we talk about the series, specifically the shows, then in the 3 seasons of the original series, there's nothing huge with the Klingons.
Right.
TNG doesn't do anything big with, Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine for that is founded Jem'Hadar, and Voyager doesn't suggest.
I think that we have to remember that the 2 shows, and it's less here, but it's kind of Next Gen is like a quasi of this, but like the 2 shows that are most influenced by Gene Roddenberry's vision of how humans should be are TOS, the animated series, and TNG, and he is a hardened, an ardent believer in diplomacy and like the idea that like you can have a great story without that kind of like shoot 'em up conflict, even though there is a lot of shoot 'em up for entertainment value in both of these Star Trek series, and you can't avoid that. But he is trying to contend always, and I think that the people connected with TNG are kind of like in a way either forced to or choosing to kind of comply with this vision. And so that's something that we see over and over. So it does make sense that the Romulans never become a big threat. We don't get those big threats and the big payoff of a war until Deep Space Nine, because of that. I think like that might be one of the reasons.
Well, I mean, it was never planned that way. But
I'm gonna say something horrible, but I kind of feel like Gene Roddenberry had an amazing vision, and he had like a creativity that enabled him to create like the world and the universe of Star Trek. But he maybe wasn't the best storyteller.
That's something that tends to, that's something that, and it's interesting that like you would say that, because that comes up a lot for George Lucas as well. Like I feel like a lot of people have that same sort of notion or critique. And what I guess the only like kind of defense for both of them that I would say is that like the thing is that like, yeah, maybe now people in more exciting ways, but they can't tell the story quite like the creators do. And Star Trek and Star Wars are both beloved because of the original like versions of them, you know. So like Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek, and it may not be like the Star Trek that's exciting today, but it was definitely something that like caught everyone's attention. And I can't help it, I think anyone who goes back and watches the original series will eventually like see the heart of it, which is what, you know, the heart of the story, which is like this idea that humanity can become the best version of itself, the way that we think that like it's impossible to reach. Star Trek tries to say, no, it's actually not impossible to reach. You can reach that. Society will reach that. And I think that's like something that Star Trek doesn't say as much anymore. It's like, it's definitely like the underlying message, but like newer Star Trek focuses more on conflict in, you know, like war and like grander scales. And that started because of Deep Space Nine, you know?
I wouldn't blame Deep Space Nine for what Discovery is
I'm
doing.
not blaming. I think it's great.
But
I'm just saying. I'm just saying that like Star Trek
yeah.
Discovery is finding its footing, and its first season was, I think, you know, I would say that like if I were, you know, to rank it, like it's my least favorite series right now, but I still like it. I still think it's worth watching, and I'm excited about season 2. I think that it can evolve into a better show. But I do, and you guys know this, like I've said this into the ground, but like its handicap is something that has to do with its setting, and it's unfortunate that they didn't go forward, but that's why the Picard show is so exciting.
The problem with Discovery as it stands is that instead of, how should I put this, instead of showing us the best of humanity, they keep telling us that they're the best of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They keep saying that we are this, we do this, we act this way, we're good because of this, but none of their characters reflect that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the issue. Never did Geordi say he was the best engineer, never did he say he was an amazing person, but by the end of the series, you love the character, you know how good he is as an engineer, and you know how good he is as a person. And it's the same thing for every character in all of, you know, Star Trek. Discovery keep on insisting we are Starfleet, we are this, we are that, but you don't show it.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that.
But then that's not a problem of Discovery, isn't it? It's a problem of the times that we live in, and it's a problem of a lot of franchises that exist now. In a way, Star Trek, like every Star Trek show kind of reflects the problems of their own times. It's just that the problems that we have today annoy me more, I think, than the problems of before. But
well, that's very personal. But I would say that, like, again, I think that the ultimate thing is that if Star Trek Discovery were addressing these same issues, but if the show was set in the future, like 100 years after TNG, I think the show would be a lot more well received. I think the biggest problem is this constant, it gives you fatigue. It's this constant like, how does this fit into what I already know? And granted, there are a lot of new fans that don't have that problem, that don't know, that haven't seen like basically everything of Star Trek. And I definitely haven't seen all of Voyager and all of you know, catching up finally, but with just the Star Trek that I know, it's still like, you know, with just the Star Trek kind of like story that I understand, it's a hard time always constantly having to like worry about like, well, how does this fit in? Like, I don't understand this. Like, those are not the things that you want to think about when you're watching entertainment. I think you really do want to discover new things, and that's a handicap for Discovery, because like, if you have seen anything before Discovery of Star Trek, you're constantly wondering, well, how does this fit in? It's like, just like a handicap.
Well, let me just bring it back briefly to season 5. What elements of this season, whether they're characters or a race that we saw or something along those lines, what elements from this season that, you know, we saw for the first time in this season, do you wish had shown up again in later seasons and that did not? You know, for me, I always give the example, and I know, again, I'm alone in this, but I always thought Nagilum should have shown up again on another episode. I always thought that some, I don't know why. I just think that, I mean, of all the things, why not Nagilum? But is there any character or a planet or something that you guys
crystalline entity, I think, because if you take the
Another
time, if you take the time to give us a second one, then you've already like once is once is all right, twice, but without justifying it is kind of a waste of time.
Interesting.
But if you bring it back a third time, but then do like a really interesting story with like this character or this beast, kind of explain it, try to justify its presence, or just try to like show us the impact that this thing has, right?
Well, they killed the crystalline entity, so you're saying they shouldn't have killed it in the
Maybe
this
they should
episode.
have killed it.
Second one, right?
Or second one or whatever. I don't know. Like you killed it. Maybe another one
killed it. Yeah.
Maybe there's another species, like more of them that come and they're mad because you killed them or whatever.
Right.
Well, just I don't know. Fucking, is it a Romulan weapon? Boom.
But that's what Picard always thinks.
I don't know. They could have done something more with that because they already showed it twice, and this ultimately it's not that useful because it's just an episode about this woman beefing Data, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot that she was actually just like
she's just like
obsessed with her dead son.
You're the one who brought it here.
Yes, that's right. For me, I think that I wish that there was more, and again, not something that this can't be a real critique of TNG because I think it was cutting edge for the time that it was there, but I do wish that like the season finale was something that kind of like there was more connective tissue throughout the season. Like I wish there was more like clues hidden throughout the season because I think that would have been an amazing way to like tell a story. But again, not something that could have been done. So the episode that I would have liked to have seen fleshed out, but in the opposite direction, was Time Zero. I think that like it would have made the season finale even stronger. And Guinan's an interesting character to me, and I think that she's a missed opportunity as well. I think it is cool to keep her as a mystery. It made me realize, and I'm wondering if Guinan is kind of like an original concept that sprouted forth here in TNG, but her story and like the way she meets Picard and like, you know, out of time or out of sequence reminds me of another relationship on Doctor Who that they do in the newer Doctor Who, and that's the character of River Song. And I thought that there was like a similarity to that, but they don't flesh it out at all. It's just that we're made to understand that Guinan's been waiting all this time to mention to Picard, like, you need to go down to this away mission because that's the way that you meet me, which is pretty fascinating, you know.
I don't know if you guys covered this in your Time Zero discussion, but what do you guys think there's a chance, or would you guys want to see Whoopi Goldberg reprise her role as Guinan for Ultimate
Absolutely,
Picard?
yes.
Yeah.
Do you think there's room? I mean,
Yes.
do you think there's ground to cover in this relationship?
I think so. I think Guinan. We didn't talk about having Guinan on Old Man Picard. We talked about having a young Guinan, but like a really young Guinan, like before the time we meet her in Time Zero. So this is like way in the past, because it would be easier to like recast a younger actress. But then it is. I mean, it's hard to recast Whoopi Goldberg, isn't it? But
well, we also talked about how you could just do the CG like Michelle Pfeiffer and Michael Douglas, but you could have Guinan on Discovery, which is kind of
for like a show. That's
why not?
Interesting.
They do it on one episode on Westworld, for Anthony Hopkins, but then that was like one episode. You can't do it on a regular bit. I think it's just too expensive at this point.
Well, certainly for one episode, Guinan can be in Discovery and look like Whoopi Goldberg of the time, you know, approximate what Whoopi Goldberg kind of looked like around that time, and they can do it. But yeah, Guinan is the kind of character that not just in this season, but overall, I think could have been a more. I would have liked to seen more Guinan. And Ilorians seem interesting. A species that was so advanced already in a time when humans were still, using horse and buggy, right? So it's an interesting concept.
This is going to be a rare thing for me to say about Time Zero. A compliment. I actually think that Time Zero would have been. I think I would have appreciated Time Zero better if the menace of the, I forget what the name of the aliens are.
The Davidians.
Davidians. I think if the Davidians had proven to be more of a threat in future episodes, I would have forgiven the lapses in logic and storytelling in Times Arrow. I think they're a very interesting villain, that race, but it's, by the time the episode's over, everyone's forgotten about them already. I mean, it was a really interesting premise for an alien race, and I remember at the time thinking, okay, we lost the Borg, but we're gonna get this now, and this didn't go anywhere.
Well, they could have used it for the season. So they end Redemption Part 2 in episode 1, but then they could have introduced Data's head in episode 2. They could have said, like, this is episode head, and then you could have had like an ongoing kind of,
because it would have been cool. That's exactly it. Like in this episode in Times Arrow, right? In Times Arrow, Data's like trying to convince the crew like there's nothing to be worried about. So like it would have been cool
season,
if,
you don't know if he's going to die in each episode. Every time there's an away mission, you're scared.
I think it would have created. You're right. I think it would have created a great tension and anxiety. That would have been.
You have the time thing at the end. Like at the end of the season, he goes back in time, and you're like, "Oh my god, this is what happens, right?" And then you would have had that story arc go through the entire season. But then TV wasn't made. It
would have been even cool.
I mean,
well, the other thing would have been cool is like Data. They find Data's head. It causes them to start researching this, and then they find out about these weird disappearances that occurred in mass of humans around that time period. And then Guinan's like, "Oh, I remember Earth," and that. There could have been a lot of like cool thing, but. Anyways, let's start wrapping it up. Let's give our ratings for season 5. I will start. I'm going to give this season a 6 because the episodes that are really strong do, I think, elevate the season above a 5. But it did have like an unusual amount of episodes that I think that I just didn't connect to or see eye to eye with.
I didn't realize we rated the seasons as well.
We did. We had been.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I give it a 5.
Ooh. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna give it. Okay, I'm gonna give it a 5 as well. No, I'm gonna give it a 5. I don't know. Fuck.
It's 5.
Well,
it's an average
6.
season,
but it has like the
you want to give it a 6.
But the bad and the good kind of.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna give it a 5.5 because it does have those like symbolic episodes, right?
Okay.
5.5.
5.
All right.
Well, I stay with 5.
Then I should go back and like watch the episodes that I missed and then rate them, and then I could actually do like an actual average for my season.
Oh, there we go.
I won't do that. There's too much shit episodes to watch.
Season 5 gets an average of about, we'll say, 5.7. My 6 pulls up the rating just a little bit.
That always amuses me.
But anyways, I think slightly above average. Let's see how season 6 does. Gentlemen, it has been wonderful to have you on. Thank you, Gary. I love showing your artwork off in these recap episodes. It's a nice little tradition, and it reminds me how wonderful you are. I'm excited about using your images for season 6. And live long and prosper. And thank you to everyone who's listening and tuning in. And we'll see you next time.